And then again, we've talked about if an EKC goes down today, or if someone's in a design phase and wants to know what the alternative is because the 326 isn't available anymore. This is another depiction of our pack controller, the 772. Yes, it can do the full rack as well. So it's not just a device intended for the high pressure valve and the flash gas bypass. It can handle everything you see bullet pointed here with the compressors, the fans, heat reclaim. So it's really taking full ownership of the rack now on a CO2 system if we need it to.
And so this is the best option if, just say that ECK fails, 326 fail. This is what you would say would be one of the better options to get, because you have multiple rack controllers, I know, that can do it. Some are a lot bigger. You'd have more algorithms, more IOs, things like that, more expansion on it compared to this. So this would be the smaller version, 772A.
Yeah, I think you're going to get some of the other options that are a lot of overkill. There's going to be a lot of features in there, a lot of settings that you're going to sit there and say, I'm not using any of this. I don't want to see this, but the 772 will help dial that in a little more to where it's some options specifically for the high pressure side of the system. And so if we're in that situation where we're looking at kind of replacing the 326 with the pack controller, then you can see on this slide some of those comparisons, just maybe wiring and setup, really. So from a supply power standpoint, we don't have to change anything. The 772 can still run off the 24 AC, which is good. The display and programming, so you guys can see here, obviously this no built-in display like we had on the 326, so it wouldn't be a matter of pressing buttons to set that up. We're now moving on to a pretty standard piece of equipment or program that we call service tool that we use with any of our pack controllers. So that would be probably one of the biggest things that the guys would have to prepare for, is the fact that they'd want to install this. It's a free download from our website. So it's not that it comes at a cost, but they would need to have this software installed on a PC so that they can set up and be prepared for running the pack controller in place of the EKC.
So it says remote display as well. If they don't have a computer, for an example, is there an option to plug in a remote display to do the setup, the MMIGR S2, or no?
Yeah, so that's more of just a display. You're not going to be able to do all the functionality you need. So when you get into programming IO points and that sort of thing, that wouldn't be feasible through the MMI. But if someone wanted a display to see opening degrees, pressures, that sort of thing, that's where that would offer that.
So it's just a total display. Perfect.
Yep. Valves, really, the pack controller can cover anything the EKC could and more. So on the high pressure side, it can drive the ICMTS still, or it could drive a CCMT if that was the valve that we were using on the high pressure side. Yep. And then on the flash gas side, similar, anything that we need to cover for the valve type there, we can do that. The module, I'll slide back up again here, but I've got this bullet point on expandable IO. So you see the pack controller here, the 772. You get some predefined terminals here. You get 11 inputs at the top, which obviously we wouldn't need all them for just those two valves that we're controlling. We've just got the two transducers and the temp sensor. But then we only have relays at the bottom of this. So when we're talking about driving stepper valves or a 0 to 10 signal for an ICMTS, the outputs for that aren't on the base module, I'll call it. We do have to add, and this is where the expandable IO comes into play. But there's an optional module that you would just snap right onto the end. There's tracks at the right side. You can't see it in this depiction, but there's tracks on the right side of the pack controller, and that optional module for the stepper valve outputs that could just snap right onto the end of the main baseboard here to offer those points.
So you need the 772 controller, pack controller, and you would also need the AKXM 208C. So you need those two. Okay.
Yep, that's correct.
Because if you just ordered one, that stepper valve, the flash gas bypass valve, would not be able to operate. Is that correct?
Yeah, you wouldn't have anywhere to wire it to. So all you have are those relays available on the main pack controller board. So you wouldn't be able to operate anything.
Okay, so the AK772 and then the AKXM208C. And now you have those two things, you're good to go.
Yep.
And service tool. You'll need service tool as well.
Service tool as well. That's correct.
Okay, perfect. Those three things.
And so with service tool, the connector, the cable, nothing unique about it in terms of cables that are kind of readily available or readily used. It's a USB cable, so USB port from your computer, and then it's the USB-B style connector that's on the front of the pack controller here. So I always say it's the printer cable type of USB port on that end, but it's not a Danfoss unique cable that you need to get from
You
computer
can buy them
into
on
the pack
Amazon or
controller.
something and get it shipped the next day.
Yep, a couple of dollars and you're good to go. On the parameter side, so once you're actually you've got all the equipment now, maybe you've even wired up, but now it's okay, I got to set this thing up. What am I doing here? So the pack controllers don't use these parameter abbreviations that the EKC did, which are the left side of each chart, each section that I've got showing on the screen now. But the description that is in the pack controllers, I've got this on the right side of the slide. So you can see for any parameter that we had in the EKC, there's going to be a place in the pack controller that same setting exists. So if we're replacing the EKC, hopefully it's not because it's a completely dead system or dead controller where we can't see anything. If it is, then we're starting from scratch in some regards. But if we do have the display available before we remove the EKC, we would want to see someone basically capture what the settings are for each of these parameters. And this slide here can kind of describe what setting in the pack controller you want to go to put that same value in.
So if you have a default, so if you have everything's default except these parameters were set up, all you need is these ones, leave everything default. And when you put this into the pack controller, that should be the proper programming for this new controller.
Yeah, and the pack controllers are pretty nice where it doesn't just kind of throw everything at you from a setting standpoint and say maximum options for the craziest setup you could get.
Yeah.
Here's all the parameters. It does initially ask in one of the first screens that you're setting up, what type of system are you controlling or what parts of that system are you controlling? And so that will populate the other parameters you see. So you're not going to have to dig through a million parameters necessarily just to get to the ones that you need here for what you're doing for an EKC replacement.
Perfect.
But yeah, we've got them grouped here. We have this documented if we ever need to get this out to someone, but kind of grouped based on the function. So high pressure valve, flash gas bypass valve, heat reclaim, our optional functionality there. And then if we had something, again, a phase loss monitor or similar wired to those first two terminals on the EKC, then we also have a parameter that would allow you to tie that into the pack controller to use that in the same fashion as well. So everything's mapped out.
And so that description is actually what service tool would show. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yep.
That's correct. That's the naming that you would see for that setting in the pack controller. Addressing, I'll admit for guys that maybe don't see a lot of Danfoss or are only kind of used to the older equipment like the EKC, this is a newer adventure for them where they have to go in and just like any other control system, you've got to address your points. So you've got to say what module and what point that you're wiring each function to. So as far as your pressure transducers, your valves, we've got to define where that controller should be driving that signal to those devices or reading the feedback from them for a pressure or temperature. So part of your service tool setup will be to get in and address the points. It's not a predefined position where everything would be wired to. So you can see here the screen from service tool. This would be where we get in, and whether it's for an analog output, this is a screenshot of a fully controlled system. So more than what we would just see for high pressure and receiver bypass valves. So that it wouldn't be as much to program in that replacement situation, but this is what the screen looks like, where you're essentially programming in two numbers. What module is it on? So module 1 would be the main 772A itself. And then if we have something like the 208C for the stepper valve outputs, then that would be maybe a second module that we would put into that position. And then just which output or input on that specific board are we wiring to for that function.
Okay, so because for sure with this option, it will be 1 and 2 because we only need those two for an example.
Yep.
The 772 and the AKXM 208C. So that 208C would have to be wired back to the 772. and you would put that in what you're connected to, like so the V receiver 1 module. Is that correct?
Yep. So the 208C would just be snapped right onto the end of the 772A. And then, yeah, if you're wiring from the first output on the 208C for, say, that's your receiver bypass valve, then you would program that in accordingly. So it would be the second module and then the point you're wired to in that column for this receiver bypass valve here.
Yeah.
We do try to prevent some errors, and especially with the stepper valves where you have things like step rate, max steps, phase current, all those things to worry about. We do try to eliminate some possibilities for errors there. We don't make the guys put in every single one of those specs or features.
Okay.
Here it's kind of coded in already, and you're just choosing which valve model you have, and those other things are inherently built in with that selection.
Yeah, so you got to go on, you got to take the insulation maybe off the valve because if there's insulation on it, and you got to look at it if it's a CCM 20 as we have there, or another one 12 or whatever you have for those, and you just select that to make sure. Because if you put the wrong one in there, you don't select that, that's going to have a different range. It's going to have different step rate. It's going to be one, different range.
Yep, there are different max steps, and now you think you're driving the valve 100% open, and you've only driven it maybe 75% open. So yeah, it's very important that you're choosing the right options for that valve type here, and the same for the pressure transducer type. Back to what we just talked about on using the wrong transducer on the EKC. If you choose the wrong transducer type on this setup, then that'll affect the pressure that the controller thinks it's reading and how it controls those valves.
Okay. Just go back there one more time. Do you need to use like set up speed compressor one, a medium temp, because you're not using any of this condenser speed? Do you have to worry about any of that stuff, condenser speed, or
not in the situation where scenario where we're just taking an EKC out and applying a pack controller? This would be settings or application options that if we were taking full control of the rack. So if the pack controller had control of all the compressors on the low temp, medium temp side, that would be setup options that you're seeing here that would be used.
So the only one really on this one would be the V receiver 1 and
VHP. So this is your high pressure valve, VHP, and then VREC would be your receiver bypass valve.
Yeah, so those are the two. If you're just doing that replacement, you need to set up those addressing.
That's exactly
those valves.
Right.
Okay.
Yep. And then over on the sensor input side, it would be your receiver and high pressure valve. I'm sorry, receiver and your gas cooler outlet transducers, and then the gas cooler outlet temp sensor. So those are the three sensors that you'd be assigning. It should be the only three you're assigning in that setup.